Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to grow your firm by providing virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome to our Modern CPA Success Show episode. Today's a topic I think people are going to really like. We're talking to Katina Peters, who is managing partner of Peters, Johnson, Staley and Company. Welcome, Katina.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
the topic that we're going to talk about as your firm has transitioned to really focusing on CFO services, advisory kind of things, I think will be of interest to a lot of people. Joining me today is Adam Hale. Adam is a founder of Summit CPA Group, now a partner of Anders CPA and Advisors. Adam, welcome and glad you're here today.
Hey, everybody.
So Katina, do you want to tell us a little bit? I know you've got a somewhat unique organizational structure in your company, and so maybe give some people idea a little bit about kind of what the firm's about, how you've organized it for some ground setting before we jump in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when we set up the firm, we set it up to be a place for people to come and work when they had families and to kind of get out of the usual, grind of the CPA world, which is typically a lot of hours and things like that. So, we set it up to be a very flexible structure so that especially it tends to be more mothers, but everybody's welcome. It's they have kids they gotta shuffle to school and pick up, and all the responsibilities there, but they didn't want to necessarily give up their career and profession for it. So we operate on a 20 to 30 hour work week, and it's set kind of by the individual. So whatever hours are comfortable for their schedule, they want to work. We have a certain guidelines around when the working hours should be, because we do have some team meetings and some things like that, but they can work at night, they can work on weekends, things like that to fill in the hours that they're looking to work. So we tried to structure it really to capture that a part of the profession that was maybe stepping out of the profession to take care of family, to do other things, and try to offer kind of another way for them to work that was a little different and unique.
Really neat. And that's the majority of the firm would be on that type of flexible, a little bit less than 40-hour schedule. Is that fair?
The entire firm,
everybody.
Yeah. And we're completely virtual, always have been too. You guys shifted to that, but we were started off that way and everything. So yeah, everyone in the firm is that, including, all our administrative people work, part-time, things like that as well. So.
When we connected at DCPA, Katina, I think you told me it was only like the second or third time that you had met in person with your partners.
Yep.
So,
true.
Pretty great. That's pretty cool. And totally different than anything you would have expected, 20 years ago. That would just not even been possible. Heck, even 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
But I think
we went several years at the beginning of the company. We all met through another agency that did called CPA Moms, and they did work. We worked for them and worked together, and we're on their leadership team. And she wanted to sell out her client base, so we all joined together and formed a partnership and did that. And all of that was done without us ever meeting in person. So it was several years of PJS before we actually met in person. So a different experience. A lot of people were like, really? You haven't met your partners ever?
I was one of those people that was like, really?
Those kinds of things. But yeah.
A lifestyle business is just difficult in general. Like it's one thing to have 2 or 3 people on your team, or even whenever you started, I'm sure it was like the 3 of you, like you said, you had you had shared experiences and kind of lifestyles. But as you scale, I think all service-based businesses are difficult whenever you scale them. Just leveraging humans in general is difficult. But then doing it at a lifestyle basis and then still being able to serve the client, especially in an environment, I think, whenever you think about client advisory services or accounting services, it's a lot more needy than go into the pile, grabbing a stack of tax returns and just knocking it out. Right. So it does require a lot of hand holding of the clients and a lot of just institutional knowledge that kind of goes in with that. So I always, and I know the first couple times we met, I just kept picking your brain on the structure. Like, okay, so how does that work? Because I know you're fixed fee, just like we are. Yep. How are you servicing the clients when you're not maybe there Monday through Friday, or you're not, to be able to pick up those loose ends? And so not only do I think that you have and you've been able to build, how many people do you have on the team now?
20 now.
Big team.
So
Yeah.
pretty impressive to be able to build and do that on that many people, right? But you also have a pretty unique structure in terms of some of the compensation models too, that
Yes.
a lot of people in the space have had difficulties, because the other, shadow side, I think, to this type of business is a lot of times whenever you're talking to an audit partner or a tax partner, they're like, it doesn't seem as profitable. I get the trade-off. It's a little maybe a little less profitable for the trade-off for having the annuity. And so I think we would prefer to have the annuity and lose just a little bit. But the idea is to optimize that and through efficiencies, hopefully be just as profitable or more profitable. And I think that you put together some pretty cool safeguards right away, where you're like percentaging out, basically the responsibilities, and people are getting paid that way. So you don't really have to worry about managing their time, and then people don't feel like they're, especially part-time people, the thing that's the struggle is that when they need a little bit more money, maybe they work a little bit more, or whenever they don't, they work a little bit less, that kind of a thing. You don't have to really worry about that because their pay doesn't change, and they're actually incentivized to be more efficient and potentially work less, right?
Right. And that goes back to, when we started off more as bookkeeping, tax, kind of a little more traditional, some advisory sprinkled in firm. But we started off, just knowing that, we couldn't take on payroll and, all those things. So what we decided to do was to offer that these people come in as contract, and they are able to also have other clients if they want to, aside from us as well. A lot of them don't, but some of them do. And what we do is we give them 50% of the revenue that they generate in. So they have an allocation of the maintenance, so we say this is your allocation that you're going to get, kind of expected hours. We try to still, we don't want to take advantage of people, obviously, either. And we do monitor that from both sides to, making sure that they are being efficient, and also making sure that, you do sometimes have scope start to creep or jobs start to grow as the businesses grow and it gets to be more. So we monitor that pretty well, but it also puts onus on them a little bit to also monitor. We ask them, okay, you need to tell us, hey, this is taking longer, it's getting more complicated, whatever the case may be, so that we make sure that it's fair, for the client and fair for the people that we work with as well. So
sounds like a really good model.
Yeah, I think that's even a great transition into, kind of what Tom was mentioning earlier, is early on, it was, a lot of, I guess they define it as CAS 1.0, client accounting services. You were doing a lot of, I was talking to a firm the other day about the difference between bookkeeping and accounting. And they're just like, what is the difference? And it's like, well, I guess it depends on the degree of the person doing it. Paraprofessional, professional, we just slide the name and charge more for it. But whenever it comes to like accounting and then going into advisory, that's whenever we very first connected, because you recognize the need, I think, for just kind of moving upstream in the value chain, and you really wanted to start focusing on advisory. Can you talk to us a little bit about what kind of led you there and that kind of stuff?
For sure. Yeah. I think it's always been something that we enjoyed, but it was like how to build it in, how to make it a priority, and, kind of struggling with your typical, you have lots of tax returns and lots of books and just stuff, day-to-day stuff you have to get done, and don't have as much time, for the other side of it. And interestingly enough, I was taking a CPE in December to get the rest of my credits in, and Enlightened Business Solutions. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but he was talking about kind of letting go of that traditional, way of doing things, and really turning it more into this advisory, but coaching from like an accounting perspective. So more of advisory. So it wasn't to quite the level we're at now with what we learned from you guys, but it was like an introduction into that world. And we did some coaching with them, and that really helped shift our mindset. Like, okay, we can move into this, we can do more and charge more. And, there is that value there. So we started shifting away from, problem clients, calling the list a little bit, letting go of those kinds of things and opening up space to do more. But then it was still undefined. It was, okay, we know we want to do this more stuff, and we want to really partner and help the business owner grow, and, go through that process with them, and really, show them what their financials are saying, and really educate them, and really look at industry analysis and do all the things. But we didn't really have a structure designed for exactly how to go about doing that. it was a little or esoteric somewhat. So, my partner, Jamie Staley, tripped across you guys in a cash flow tool seminar, I think is how we found you. And she was like, hey, we should see what these guys are doing. That sounds like what we're trying to do. So then we started, listening to your podcast and taking your CPE courses. And I did do the
playbook course,
playbook course also that you guys put out as well. And that really this really helped us to find that structure that we were lacking, like trying to understand, okay, so we really should maybe step in and actually call it, the CFO service and the controller service, because that it just gave a more of a defined definition for us and to be able to step into further. So it's kind of been a little bit of a pathway over the last several years for us in transitioning the business over.
When you talked about, I think you said calling some of the existing clients and things, when you started offering these services, was it mainly to other existing clients as saying, let's increase what they're doing, or were you bringing in more new clients with advisory type things?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a combination. We do have clients that we were working with that, we started to talk more in depth with and to, kind of slowly work with them more on the advisory side and everything. And then we also, just had a different mindset when we were bringing in new clients, even though we hadn't yet defined, all the things that we learned later and that we're working through still now. But we were able to just come at it with a different perspective and mindset, different charge structure in place, things like that. So it definitely upscaled, who we were talking to and what we were talking about at that point.
Are you interested in offering virtual CFO services at your firm or scaling your existing service offerings? The Virtual CFO Playbook, How to Land $60,000 a Year Clients and Provide a Killer Client Experience, is an online series of modules that will equip you with essential tools for creating and delivering scalable VCFO services. These approaches have helped Summit CPA grow from $500,000 to upwards of $5 million in revenue over the past decade. If you're ready to grow your firm, visit summitcpa.net/VCFO Playbook to enroll now.
I would guess our listeners are probably really interested in how do I look at my existing book and try to increase that. So I'd love to spend a little bit of time there. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how the pricing changed for maybe a typical client, what they were getting before, and then also how you approach them in saying, here's what we can do more, but it's going to cost X amount more? I have a feeling that's what a lot of people are looking and thinking about if they advance that.
Sure. I wish I had a really straight line to give you on how that works. It was very, it morphed as we went, I think, and each situation was a little bit different. I think it was more about, and we do maintenance pricing, and we did also do a mix of hourly pricing. So a lot of that we started with, we're just going to kind of add on hourly, and then we leveled the maintenance charge once we kind of leveled out what we wanted. So I think cutting back on the clients that, as they say, they bring a little bit of money and a lot of time and annoyance and stress a lot of times. Not all of them, but, it was like cutting some of that out opened up more brain space, I would say, for us to talk more with the good clients that we did have and start to recognize more needs and start to offer, hey, we can help you with that. So it wasn't a well-defined and executed plan at the time. It was each of us kind of going, little baby steps, because we didn't really have that vision in mind like we do now after going through the playbook and seeing kind of how you guys structured stuff and getting our own ideas a little more in line. But it's interesting how when you open up that space, it can be a little scary, right? You're cutting some revenue streams, and that's kind of scary. But amazing how much space it opens up for you to find the need. And once you start aligning with the client at that level, they start to really see the value. We went from years ago having our largest client at $2,500 a month to now we have $20,000 a month clients, several of them.
Wow.
And then we have some in between too. So, you can definitely level off at different places, and we don't anticipate always having, $20,000 a month clients and all of them being that. And neither are they. We have, smaller ones as well. But it's just that's just the possibility that can happen when you're bringing that value and you're really aligning with the business owner on what they need and helping them execute those things. So we were able to do that over time.
That's great.
I think that's a great experience there, because I do, Tom, I hear what you're saying. A lot of times people are like, okay, I have this existing client base, or maybe I'm a tax firm. How do I convert all these people? I know I'm having these conversations. And it really does come down to just situational awareness. I don't think that, in my past, it was always like financial advisors that would beat on the CPA firm's door, and they'd want to just scrub your tax list, and they'd come in with this organizational tool. Okay, which clients have this much money, which ones have this, and then they'd want you to, here's the letter that you hit them up with, and they'd have this whole marketing spiel to get financial dollars moved out of your tax base. Not a good approach.
Not a 4x4 matrix, right?
I think it's about just being, no, do not do that. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katina, but it really starts with just understanding what you can deliver and what that looks like first, like gaining a clear picture. And then I think that once you start talking to those clients, that's whenever you're like, oh yeah, actually I do this, and this is how I would solve that problem. Before, it was always just like maybe anecdotal, it's just like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that. But now it's like, no, I actually have a process for that can fit there, and we can start doing things on them. Did you find that to kind of be the case, like making sure that you had that foundation of what you were doing first?
Yeah, I mean, I think it did, like I said, it changed a little bit over time. I think one of the big things that, I know you guys have talked about the imposter syndrome and things like that. So I think one of the big shifts was a mindset shift first, because then that really helped us recognize and align better and, recognize our own value and put ourselves out there for that. It's definitely helps to continue to define and structure more, because then now we're at the place where we have a definition and a structure and ability to talk to that and to really well define what it is that we're offering to potential clients coming in the door. Because before it was, we kind of had to baby step into it, even with the newer ones, because it wasn't, oh, here's what you're getting for this. It was, oh, let's start off here and then we do this, and we kept growing it from there. Typically, I think, obviously you have to have great core values. You have to have great systems, processes. You have to have, the ability to build that trust, with the client and to align and expand those services to become that. But now we're flipping a little bit of that script now that we have the better structure, set out. Okay, this is what our service is. This is how it's going to work. This is how we onboard, so that we can do that more on the front end now, when we're talking to people and we're, going through that performance. And it also, allows for just all the things to come together. You can market better, right? Because you know what you're saying a little more clearly, and that clear definition of things. You perform the service better because you have a clear outline of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I know you guys have talked about, having a framework, and and obviously as a CFO, it's a very customizable situation. So that's the same approach we have. Here's our framework. We want accountability. We want certain level of this is what we do, but obviously it's very customizable to the business and what they need and how we work with them. But it also allows, people coming in the door to, as CFOs, as accountants, whatever level you're at, to understand what it is and to be trained on how to, do your part in that too. So it's really comes full scale once you kind of lay out that structure. And that's kind of the process where we're at. We're in that part of, we have the structure, we're building still some of the operations and things behind it, but and working on training people in it, things like that. But it definitely just kind of interplays a lot, comes full circle when you have all that defined.
I love that so I really want to emphasize one thing, the going in and trying it early on. And I noticed that when you and I worked together, when we were in the fireside chats that we had, the Tuesday weekly calls. Many of the people coming in, my impression is, as accountants, we're very structured and diligent kind of our thinking, but it's sort of like analyze before they actually want to do anything. And it did feel like you were saying, we're getting out there and doing it. And you mentioned it was scary, which I totally get. But the number of times I've said to someone, just try it. Try using a pricing tool with a client, like on the phone, or try this. You're going to learn so much more than spending hours and hours with me asking what I had done. And I'm just curious if you think that was your impression, and would you, having now developed the process, Do you think it was the right approach to say, I'm just going to try it? Or do you wish you would have said, let's develop a lot of processes before stepping in to do this?
No, I think definitely, and I couldn't, because of the journey we're on, I guess we weren't faced with having the structure before we tried it because we didn't know what the structure should look like. So we kind of just said, we're going to try something. So that helped a little bit. But even in having the structure and the things, it really is, you have to kind of jump in and do it, because even though we've built the structure and we're utilizing it, we're still tweaking it. Like, you don't know until you're in it exactly what it's going to look like and exactly what it needs. And obviously every client situation is specific to them anyway, but you can do some forethought and you can plan things, but it's always going to not be exactly what you forethought it to be anyways. So at some point you just have to, just jump in and do the work and, do your best and learn, and those kinds of things.
It's okay to suck is what you're saying. Right? It's okay to suck the first couple of times. Let's be real. Sometimes you get off a call and you're just like, wow, I could not have scripted that any better. I was amazing. I can't believe they don't go with our service. And other times, even if you've done it 100 times, you get off the call and go, oh my, I couldn't put two words together on that call. Like, what the hell? So you just have to, but I think that, earlier in the conversation, you were talking about imposter syndrome, and we do talk about that a lot. We talk about it with our CFOs. It just, the stuff that we talk about day to day just seems so that you're just like, well, of course, but to the client, that's real information. Sometimes whenever I see people in our profession, like posting tips and tricks and stuff like that on LinkedIn and other stuff, I'm like, that is like, so like accounting 101, like that's not even super insightful to me. But to the masses that they just sent it out to, they're like, yeah, this person knows what they're talking about. So it's like, you just have to remember that they're expert. And I think that's also intimidating because they're experts at their business. So here we are coming in trying to kind of like, hey, you should probably think about, and you can't go to toe with them with what they sell and their institutional knowledge that they have on their product and all that kind of stuff. But whenever you come in and you just kind of look at it and stay in your financial corner, then it's really easy to, be able to just snap the bracelet every once in a while. Remember, you're the finance person and just lean into it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think recognizing, because Adam, you and I had this conversation when I started 5 years ago. I definitely had that imposter syndrome. And it's helpful to know that, yes, you do have expertise here. And that's a somewhat natural feeling that you're just going to have to get over, and sort of naming it definitely helped me in doing that. Have your clients, so you went through a journey with clients just like we have, where processes have changed, right? You did it one way, and then as you developed, you started changing. Any learnings about how to take a client through that part? Or did you find that they were pretty good about, okay, it's a new way of doing it and we're just transitioning to something?
I mean, I think that especially the ones that we were transitioning, we do have that really close relationship and trust with, each of the people that are involved. So I think, having that and saying, okay, we're shifting into that, and it's, been a little over time. So it wasn't like, bam, we're changing it right there, kind of thing. So it was, slow and steady and, in a comfortable way. But I think they just, they had that kind of innate trust, and they see also the outcomes and the values that the structure brings. And the, like I said, the accountability, the outcome of the growth that they're seeing, things like that. So, they have to see that, obviously, or what's the point in doing it, right? I mean, that's our goal in doing it. That's, what they want to do and get that value out of it. So yeah, they've not had a hard time moving, in that direction with us because of those longer relationships. And like I said, it just was kind of built up over a little bit of time.
And Adam, I'm curious your perspective on that, because what I would say, we change things constantly. What's your feeling for how our clients react when we're switching tools, switching processes, switching approaches?
Yeah, I think the biggest, one, I think they appreciate that, because you don't want to stay stagnant. I think that's the reason why people move. A lot of times it's like, I've kind of learned everything that I could from Katina. Now it's time to move on. So it's good to keep things fresh. I mean, obviously you don't want to be chaotic, and you have to also remember that a lot of those tools are for our benefit, not for theirs. And so while we want to show off all our little cool spreadsheets and reports and bounce from one thing to another because we put them together and we're super proud of them, you kind of have to internalize that pride. And just, your job is chief storyteller. So you use all those cool things and you can kind of speak into them, but don't don't make the client dizzy. So I think, but it's also good, like I said, to educate them that you are up on the latest stuff, that you are changing things, but the client shouldn't feel the impact
Right.
of those changes. They should just see the results of hopefully those upgrades and evolutions in your service and your tools.
So Katina, when you talked about structure, any advice for people if you look back at like what are some of the examples that you might prioritize and say these are some of the things I'd probably focus on first, or either wish you had, or maybe the early successes was you got it right? What someone who's taking that step, what would they focus on?
Yeah, I think I would, what I kind of stepped back and did when we first saw that there was a structure and it was like, oh, this is what we want to do. Like basically similar to what you guys were doing. We just couldn't figure out exactly how to define it and how to go about it. So once we kind of had that, we basically went through and decided, okay, what levels of service do we want to offer and how are we going to define, okay, we're going to be VCFOs. Well, what does that mean? What is our definition of that? Like, what things are we going to do? What things aren't we going to do? And, being an accountant, I did a spreadsheet.
We'd be disappointed if you didn't.
So, everything's a spreadsheet, right? So, to lay out, the thoughts and what does the deliverables look like and, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of like the first step, was just that high level, what is it we're trying to do and how would we go about it, et cetera, so that we could build process then around that. We could build marketing around that. We could build training around that. And it's, again, it's that try something a little bit, because it's morphing, right? As we go through a little bit, it's like, oh, we didn't think about that, or we want to change this a little bit, things like that. So it's still an ever-changing process, and you can build processes out with as much forethought as you can, but until you're in the process, it's just going to change. I know we went through a big software conversion last year for our internal processes, and it comes with these templates for each type of job, and which is nice. But as we went and learned more about how we actually were functioning with the software, we tweaked those templates and we changed things. And like, okay, well, this isn't working like we thought. We're going to do it that way. I mean, I think it's always going to be that ever-changing thing. And I do agree with Adam. I know when we work with companies that we work with, we like to see them always improving and not stagnating. And that was one of the major reasons we made a big software switch, to be honest. So I think that is important too, like you said, in a service-based situation, that you're not getting stagnated in what you do. I mean, you have to stay up on somewhat on the technology. I mean, as the advisor to the client, we need to know what's available out there too. So we want our clients to continue to grow and not stagnate, not fall behind in what they're using for systems. And not that we're going to know all their systems, right, that they're using from their end of their service line, but what are good accounting systems, what are some good communication tools, those kinds of things, so that we can help them to consider things.
Yeah, they're definitely, I agree. And that's kind of what we talk about in the course too. There's definitely a framework to it. And no matter what we say or how you say that you've done it, Katina, it's all about just being innovative and customizing it to the way you do, but it's being able to see what that basic framework looks like. And I do think you pan out a little bit with the service packages. Like, well, first of all, I guess, who do you want to serve? How do you define CFO? Like you said, that's very important. What's going to be your brand promise? And then you kind of have to move, from there, the service, the actual, scope of services that you're going to provide, and then individual ones, and everything else just kind of starts to funnel together from there. Because then you get the pricing down, you get the pitch down, all those kind of things, all the processes you can kind of fill out. And like you said, it's always going to morph, it's always going to change. You're always going to find, some things lagging there, but it's good to, just kind of start down that direction. So, but I know one other thing. I know we were talking the other day, because speaking again, not to like totally come back to imposter syndrome, but I know that we were, but it's real again. And if it's not, then you're probably a narcissist. And if you're a narcissist, you don't believe what I just called you anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We all feel that way. So I know you, whenever we were talking, you've done a really good job with all those things that you talked about. You've built out the brand promise, you've got the sales pitch down. I know that I kind of listened to one of those and we kind of went back and forth. And I think you've really got down what you do and how you do it in a way that you can convey that to a client easily. But talk to everybody about like the first couple you did, you weren't really getting feedback right away. So you were, starting to get a little nervous, right? And then just the other day, you landed what I would consider for us a whale of a client, doing the exact pitch and everything that you kind of leaned into. So talk to us about how that kind of experience has evolved and, confidence there.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so, again, I'll be a little more somewhat typical CPA, right? Sure. Not salesperson, by nature. So it's definitely a muscle you got to grow into. Some of us are taking up faster than others, I think, for sure. So, and selling this level services, it's a different sell. Like, I sold taxes, I sold bookkeeping, those kinds of things. It's a different level. It's a different lift, because we're flipping the script around and having to build that trust for them to come in at those maintenance higher level of trust right away, instead of building it over time, which is kind of how we came more into it as we grew. So it's again, looking at the things that they're asking about, looking at how are we conveying, the value to them. And that takes some practice and takes some, just getting used to how to say it succinctly. I mean, we're meeting with them for an hour and you're trying to build this trust for them to pay you, over that hour, to sign on for, relatively large sums of money, from especially what a lot of them are used to paying, right, for their CPA or tax, because they don't have the same level. So you're trying to convey that value to them and how you can really work with them to get their business and their goals and those kinds of things. So it definitely takes some practice, and it takes, thinking through, trying to kind of answer some of the questions that they likely have that sometimes they say and sometimes they don't. Right. Yeah, so working through that, asking, it's all about obviously asking good questions to them as well, both in the the beginning of the call where you're just trying to find out about them and understand them, and kind of picking out those pain points that they might have. But then also the harder part for me is at the end of the call, when we've gone through, what the services are and what the pricing is, asking them how they feel about it and talking to them about their, potential concerns. Again, it's that uncomfortable thing, for me anyways. I don't know if everybody has discomfort, but I sure do. So I just gave you all this information and I said all these things, aren't they great? And now I have to ask you, what do you think?
For this amount of money.
So then it's, it's right. Right, for this amount of money, right? And asking some pointed questions, like, do you feel like this is the type of service that you're looking for, at the close of that call, and see what they have to say and see how they're feeling about it. Because a lot of times, if you don't ask, they don't say. And then if you do ask, a lot of times they will say, well, sounds okay, or I have some concerns about this or that. And you can kind of talk to them about that, and asking them also about specifically about the price point too, like how are they feeling about that, can also be an important question too, for them, because then, you can really see where they stand on it and where their concerns lie.
One area we haven't talked about yet, you guys have really focused on marketing to at least one specific niche. Can you talk a little bit about which ones you play in, maybe a little bit about how you came to that decision? And I'd love to explore a little bit more about the focus on niche, because it's one of the areas that we talk a lot about, that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Again, as we kind of came into some of this, and even before finding you guys, we said, okay, we're only going to do service-based business. First of all, like no manufacturing, no retail, no inventory, no restaurants, things like that. We wanted to be in a service-based industry because that's where most of our background and experience was, and strengths were, et cetera. And then we said, okay, we didn't pick one. We were a little, more conservative as accountants, and we didn't want one niche to focus on. We didn't quite settle on one. So we settled on a few. So construction, dentists. We had a dentist background with one of our partners primarily, but we'd been working with them for a while, so expanded that knowledge. IT. So we have a few that we specifically are marketing to. Attorneys, missed that one as well. So there's certain service lines that we are specifically marketing to. We have landing pages specifically for them that talks to them about their specific industry, and we just felt like it really offers us the ability to build out good processes for that specific industry, right? So that when we're not trying to cover every industry that possibly could come out. And service-based businesses are all fairly similar in how you go about the accounting and the processes and things like that. And then they, each one has little nuances. Construction has its own nuances, and attorneys have their own nuances. But we wanted to try to just focus in a few certain areas, so that we weren't spreading ourselves too thin. And again, it helps you with training, it helps you with, the processes, it helps you with the marketing, to have all those in alignment, so that, you're, just getting really good at servicing those industries and really understanding those industries. And, one of the things that we really want to do is to have that integrity and to really serve at that level. That's what, makes us happy. That's what makes us feel fulfilled, that we want to help our clients and make sure that we're aligning in that way.
Yeah, I think we've talked about niches a lot. And as Tom, you mentioned, you're right. It's super important to us, but I don't know. There's like this difference between, don't get me wrong. There's some firms out there that are like 100%, all I do is dental practices. And I think that they can really leverage their database. And I think that's an excellent way to go. But I think whenever we think about niching, and of course you can go geographic versus industry and those kind of things. But I think what I know, Katina, we've had these conversations before, but whenever we think about niching, it's exactly what you just said. It's more of like, it's not that I won't work with other service-based businesses, because you can't market to every single type of service-based business there is, but we're okay with working with them because we know it fits within the mold. I would say, so for our main, focus that we're in, we probably only have about 50% of our clients now that are in that niche. That just happens to be the one that we actively market towards, so we'd put all of our content efforts and all those kind of things. We have 2 or 3 others that we're going down that road right now with. And again, it's more about focusing marketing. It's not necessarily turning away people that aren't dentists, in that example, that kind of a thing. Like, we're okay with taking on other industries. Sounds like you're kind of taking the same approach then, just it's more, the niche is more about focusing your efforts. What percentage of, in those 2 or 3 niches that you called out, like what percentage of your clients are in those lanes?
Yeah, I think it's probably similar, 50-60%. I haven't sat down and really tried to sort out exactly, it kind of depends on if you look at it from a number count or volume of revenue, which way you look at it. But yeah, and I think, like you said, we just took a hard line on anything outside of service-based, and we refer that out because we feel like that's just so different. Manufacturing is just so different, retail is so different, and there's a lot of processes and things that you have to build around that are going in a very different direction. So we do, but otherwise, if they're not in, the niche service lines that we offer, but they're still a service-based business, we're still okay with taking that because it fits, like you said, it fits the mold. It fits, the patterns of the processes that we're setting up, things like that. We don't have to build, 50 different processes for different types of businesses and different types of, we tweak it a little to fit that, but there's just so much more, and you can't be an expert at everything, right? So we want to be really good at the things that we do so that we can make that impact.
We can't be experts at everything. Don't tell Tom that. He is just about good at everything that he does.
Adam, how long have we focused on digital agencies as our niche? Would you think?
Since about 2000, over 10 years.
So isn't it interesting for that much? I know we really emphasize that it's still about half. I have a feeling that when I talk to people about niches, I think that their reaction often is, I don't want to limit my opportunities. When I say I'm going after this kind of client, I've just shut off all these others. And so I just love saying we have really focused hard on a particular niche for 10 full years, and it's still about half of our clients. So we continue, as I've done discovery, I've done lots of discovery calls outside of our niche. And we do try to work. We don't turn people away, although there are times where we'll say, oh, you're really heavy into this kind of thing. We don't have a lot of experience. Here's what we can do. But I think you get the benefits of focusing, and I don't think you're really cutting off and eliminating.
Yeah, you're limiting your marketing effort. Is what you're limiting. You're trying to be very strategic with your marketing time and dollars, I think, is the big thing. And then, to your point, like turning people away, we do turn people away.
I would even add to that, it is but also again, with the process side and the training and, those kinds of things too. I think putting your dollars in that way too, you're not spread so thin. So yes, definitely in marketing for sure. But I think also in other ways, it just helps streamline processes and training and things like that too. If you're focusing on, certain niche areas that people in your team can really get
in
good
your
at.
niches,
well.
over what time period do you think you kind of developed what the niches were? From kind of, okay, we need to pick some. I'm just curious. I assume this wasn't a one-time sit down and strategy session and you're done. Or maybe it was. Okay.
Oh, it was pretty close.
Okay.
I think a couple, maybe a couple times we sat down through. I think there was we previously did a lot of real estate rehab side of things, which is also very unique, but also extremely volatile. So it was one of those things that, and it had a lot of challenges, accounting wise, things like that. So it was like something we could do, but we were like, we don't really want to focus in that area, for example. So again, even before we found you guys, that was one of the things that the prior company was, they were like, you should niche, you should have these things. So we kind of sat down and we said, well, we don't want to be. And we were very like narrow-minded about it too, Tom. Like when it was like niche, like one, I can't pick one and only work in one. Are you crazy? That was like, where am I? So I was like, okay, well, let's not pick one. Let's pick one like service line or service business, but then also like we're gonna pick 4 or 5, that we feel really like we know a lot about and we can do well in. And with that we also don't feel like we have all our eggs in one basket industry. Especially dealing with the real estate rehab market. When we had a lot of clients in that, it's like all of a sudden the real estate market falls and everybody's like going crazy and you're, losing clients and, there's that volatility in those different industries. So I do like the ability to diversify obviously into other industries. So if something major happens, even, nobody foresaw the pandemic happening. Well, all our dental practices had to shut down for, whatever it was, 6 months or what have you. And it was like, we had to scale back for them because they couldn't, they weren't bringing any money in. And it was good that, that wasn't 100% of what we were doing because we had other industries that were just fine, weren't affected or did better, because of the pandemic. So I still like that approach, but I definitely still want to make sure that we're always giving that really high level value and we're, and working in our strengths. So we are staying kind of within that framework.
That's great.
As well.
As you work toward wrapping up, I'm curious if you were someone saying, okay, what should I be thinking kind of the first couple things if I'm thinking of, I do some back office, I do tax work, some of that, but I really want to move toward advisory. I guess I'll ask you and I'll ask Adam the same thing. 1 or 2 tips that you're like, okay, here's what you really have to do at the beginning to get this started.
Sure. I think the mindset thing was a big shift for us, to be honest. I think we had to do that first, I think, to really recognize that we do have the knowledge and the value. I've seen this meme passed around with the guy who's fixing this gigantic ship and the engine won't work and he comes in and he spends 10 minutes and he knocks in a certain spot and the engine starts and he charges $12,000 for that. And you're like, you're here for like 20 minutes. He's like, yeah, but I spent like 20 years to know where to tap and how to tap to do this. So it's a great analogy. Like a lot of us at this phase, like we have so much knowledge, like we know where to look for the problems. We know what kinds of things to do. Even if it doesn't take us long to do it, we need to recognize that there's a lot of value in that. So I think the mindset shift would probably be the first thing that I would, recommend going through. And I think looking at what you want your life to be about. I guess it's kind of like, what's your vision? I mean, you talk about vision all the time, but it's like, okay, what do you really want to be doing? Do you really want to be spending 50 hours doing 200 tax returns or, 50 hours a week doing 200 tax returns? I mean, if you do, great. I mean, there's some people like that. But if you don't, you need to envision, okay, this is what I really would like to be doing. And this is how I want to, partner with my clients. And that really, I think just helps you to refocus your mind towards that and your efforts towards that and standing back and taking a minute to really think about, do I want to be doing this next year? Like, especially as we're in tax season at this time of year, is this what I want to be doing or do I want to be doing something different? So I would start there. Then I think it would be good or maybe a little more of a direct line to start looking at, okay, what services do you want to be doing and how maybe would that be structured in doing that and spending some time doing that. And, I know when we first started doing this and it was such an interest to me that I would take an hour in the morning, even though I was busy, and like just look at that stuff. Like, okay, how do we transition? How do we get the right mindset? What do we want this to look like? What do we, those kinds of things, or at least most days, maybe it was more like 3 or 4 days a week, but you just have to spend the time thinking through it. And then you have to, if you're overloaded with clients, as many CPAs are, you have to look at that client list and you need to make space. And it's scary, but one of the things that the prior company we worked with is there's so many people out there that need help, so much opportunity, that you need to kind of let go of that fear, cut it out, and be able to recognize that it's going to get filled in with better things. So there's so much abundance of opportunity.
Really good advice. Adam, anything to add for kind of those first few steps?
Yeah, thanks for letting me follow
I know
that.
it's hard to follow.
No, mic drop. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I think that's exactly everything. The only other advice that I could just offer up is if you're confused about where to start with any of that other stuff in terms of the services, just look within what your current the people that you're working with now, whether it's their personality characteristics, their industry, and what do you enjoy about your interactions and working with them. I think that'll give you some foundation to start doing all those things that she had talked about in terms of the services and the packages and stuff like that. Just kind of lean into that a little bit, and I think it'll kind of work itself out.
Yeah, this is really helpful. I'm really hoping that people who are listening, who are thinking this, have seen a path of someone who's done it and done it successfully. And created the kind of firm that you want to, because you also did it by making a firm that's different than how many other firms are out there from a lifestyle perspective, and made it work. So that's great. Congratulations with that. Yep. Thank you very much for joining us today. Okay. Hope you guys have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, Katina.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.